Movies make it look like you have to be born into a psychic bloodline to have real abilities, and because of this, most people think it is true. But is that really the case? The answer is deeper than just a yes or no. So, I want to take you through my journey from being an engineer to becoming a professional psychic and show you the actual answer to this question. By the end of this video, you'll find out if you might be able to start honing your psychic abilities and how. Let me take you back to a story that happened around 10 years ago, but it lives in my mind as though it just happened yesterday. After I called 50 psychics and I was waiting for their predictions to play out, yes, these included fifth generation psychics, I was completely disappointed. After going through a 2-week phase of trust but verify, I found that none of these predictions played out in real life. So I realized that they didn't know what the heck they were talking about. At this point, I figured either this psychic thing is real and somehow I got 50 of the worst psychics, or it's just a bunch of nonsense. The deck was stacked a little bit towards the second one, but coming from an engineering background, I wanted to run my own experiment. I decided to become the guinea pig for this study, so I was going to predict my own future and see how the predictions are going to play out in real life. So I started thinking, how am I going to conduct this experiment? Well, if the future can be predicted 3 months in advance, then you should also be able to predict it 3 weeks in advance. And if you can predict it 3 weeks in advance, then you can probably predict it 3 days in advance. And if you can predict it 3 days in advance, then why not 3 hours in advance? This was the breaking point for my experiment, and like a kid who is excited to go to a candy store, I was excited to predict my own future and see how it's going to play out in real life. I used to go to the gym in the morning, and I had my days segmented between cardio days and weightlifting days. And I thought that there was enough variation or a variety in terms of what happens in the gym every day that I should be able to check this theory out. I figured that before I go to the gym in the morning, I would write down my predictions, and when I come back, I would compare it with what actually happened. So I started the experiment with day 1. I get up in the morning, I write down my predictions, I go to the gym, I come back, and I see that the prediction actually played out as I had written. I kind of just shrugged and said, well, 1 is not a data point, and just discarded it as nothing. So now we move to day 2. I did the same thing. I get up in the morning, I write down my predictions, I go to the gym, I come back. And guess what? The prediction again played out on day 2. So at this point, I was like, okay, well, we can still move forward. So now we go to day 3. On day 3, I do the same thing. I get up in the morning, I write down the predictions, I come back from the gym, and I see that it played out. Now I started scratching my head. This was not a coincidence. I started wondering, why is it or how is it that I'm predicting my own future? And if I can predict my own future, then I should also be able to change it. So the next day, which was going to be day 4, I decided to, let's say, take fate in my own hands. Day 4 was going to be a cardio day, and on cardio days, I would either run or do the Stairmaster, depending on whatever it was I felt like when I went to the gym. I sat down and said, today is the day I'm going to challenge the universe, and I am going to go against the predictions. So I decided that if the prediction said running, then I would do the Stairmaster, and if the prediction said Stairmaster, then I would run. I realized that only one of us could be correct, either me with my ability to change my mind between the running and the Stairmaster, or the prediction, which is going to tell me essentially what is it that I'm going to do. So how would it be possible that both of us could even be correct at the same time? My tiny little brain and logical mind couldn't think of any way. Yet, when I sat down and did the reading, what I saw made me almost fall off my chair, and I laughed so hard that I had tears coming down my eyes. No matter what I did, I would be correct, and so would the prediction. Essentially, what I saw was a lady at crossroads, meaning that I could go either this way or that way, and no matter which way I went, I had the power within me to change my mind and I would be correct, and so would the prediction. This was the turning point or the moment that changed everything for me. Think of it as the first moment when you've fallen in love with someone, you don't know how they feel, you get butterflies in your stomach, and you eagerly anticipate what is to come next. It was almost as though I had fallen in love with how the universe could communicate with me. I wasn't even sure if I could pursue this line of work and what was going to happen next. This one moment changed a lot of things for me. It was my moment. I call it the one defining moment in my life. We'll talk more on defining moments later, but if you look back at the past year, you will find that you've had very few defining moments in your life. Go ahead and put in the comments below what was the most defining moment in your life in the last 12 months. After this experience, there was a switch in my mind that flipped and made me experiment more. To cut a long story short, I started reading others as an experiment until it turned more into a profession. So, you may be wondering, are we all born with these abilities? Yes, but most people never tap into them because if things are going well, there is never a need to explore these kind of things. For instance, most people are born with 2 legs, yet very few of them flex their muscles enough to be able to run a marathon. Some people are born into a generational psychic lineage and they have seen their parents, grandparents practicing, and they kind of get the skill through these means. Think of it as being born into a family of runners and you have your parents, grandparents running, and you naturally develop a liking for running. Lastly, some others learn these skills because something happened in their life that had them take this route. For instance, they had a friend talk to them about it, or they saw something on TV, or they saw a YouTube video, or they were like me who went to 50 psychics. No matter what the circumstances, they got interested and excited that they decided to explore more. So, if everyone possesses this gift of psychic abilities, what kind of tools do you need to unlock these abilities? Well, apart from cards, crystal balls, tea leaves, you can also use psychic visions, to mention just a few tools. But the real question becomes, how do you learn to work with these tools? This is where skill is required. For instance, a good knife can cost around $100 or so, but put the same knife in the hands of a brain surgeon and it has a completely different use and value. Value is the outcome you get by using the tool. In case of a brain surgeon, he is literally saving the life of a patient. Similarly, a deck of cards, tea leaves, crystal balls can cost around $100 or less. But the value of it is they can literally change a decision you make and have you step in a completely new direction in life. So, if the tools are available for such a minuscule cost, then why isn't everyone using them? This is where learning comes in. To be able to be adept at using the tools and the information given by them. The learning can come partly through study. Think of a doctor going to med school to learn surgery. He doesn't become great by reading a book just once. He puts in hours and hours of work just to be able to use a knife for performing a surgery. Similarly, a good psychic puts in hours and hours of learning in order to be able to use the tools properly and give out the predictions to their clients. Learning also comes partly through experience. Think of a doctor performing surgery after surgery to get sharper, steadier, and more precise. They don't really master their craft overnight. Similarly, a psychic practices hundreds and hundreds of readings on people in order to be able to hone into their abilities and give out the right predictions to master their craft. And learning also comes partly by connecting with your intuition. A doctor uses intuition in surgery when something doesn't match the textbook. The body does not respond as expected. At this point, the doctor doesn't really have time for guesswork. He's operating from his intuition. A psychic uses intuition the same way when the energy doesn't match the story, when a situation feels different than expected, and when a small inner signal says that something needs attention. So what can a good reading from a psychic do? A good reading can hand you that one defining moment we talked about earlier, which only happens a handful of times during the year, but this one moment or one decision has the potential to change your life more drastically than you could have ever imagined. So, is there a tricky part to being a psychic? Well, yes, the tricky part is to be able to convey the information as is. This is where a psychic is tested because you are handing down information which is going to play out 2 weeks, 2 months down the road, and the person in front of you has no idea how on earth such a thing can happen because they are operating from the present time frame. Their logical mind cannot connect the dots between where they are and how they will end up wherever it is that the psychic has told them. For instance, when I was doing my test readings, I didn't even think that there would be a way where I could be right and so could the prediction. However, you'll realize that a good psychic will only say what they see and not go beyond that. So maybe you are not ready to be a professional psychic yet, but you still want to flex your intuitive muscles. How do you do it? Start with a simple scan of a room at a party or an event just by standing at the doorway. This is the subject of my next video, and if you want to know my crazy story of visiting 50 psychics, that video will pop up on your screen as well. So I will see you in the next video. Bye.